I'm not the help. I work here. Kennedy?
4 years and you never once called me.
You made sure I couldn't.
Then tell me what I'm missing. The bracelet. Where did it come from?
Don't. You don't get to ask me that now.
I need to know the truth.
The truth will break you. I should have given you this a long time ago.
What is it?
The truth your mother buried for 4 years.
4 years? She knew?
The reign over Empire City did not care whose life it was about to ruin. Kennedy Dunbar stood behind a folding table at Bridge Street Kitchen, ladling soup into paper bowls with hands that had not fully stopped shaking since the eviction notice arrived 3 weeks earlier. The careful, exact habits of a woman who used to chart patient vitals for a living never fully leave you, and Kennedy still kept records of everything out of instinct more than hope. She had learned to survive by staying invisible. The shelter had given her a cot, a locker, and a job scraping dishes before dawn. It was more than she'd had a month ago. She told herself that counted as progress. Tonight, Invisible was about to end. Camera crews pushed through the door first. Then the entourage. Then him. Daniel Cho, vice chairman of Chowon Group. The man Empire City's business pages could not stop writing about. The man Kennedy Dunbar had once called her husband. Get the volunteer staff out of the shot, an assistant snapped, waving a hand at Kennedy like she was furniture in the way. I'm not a volunteer, Kennedy said quietly. I work here. No one was listening. Not until Daniel lifted his eyes from his phone and found her face across the room. 4 years. 4 years since he had seen her, and it still stopped him mid-sentence. Kennedy, he said, and the whole room seemed to lean in. She didn't answer him. She reached for the small hand tugging at her sleeve instead. Her son Ellis, 4 years old, tired from daycare, waiting for her shift to end. Daniel's eyes moved to the boy, then to the thin silver bracelet on his wrist. Something about it made his chest go tight, though he could not have told you why. If a slow burn with real consequences is your kind of story, subscribe now, because what Daniel Cho notices in the next few minutes is going to unravel everything he thought he knew. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from tonight, because you are going to want to remember this one. His assistant didn't miss a beat. Sir, the press wants the photo. Give us the room, Daniel said. Sir. Now. The reporters were herded back, but not fast enough. A photo had already been taken. Kennedy Dunbar in a stained apron, standing 3 feet from the man the city called the Chowon heir. Her son gripping her hand like an anchor. By morning it would be a headline. Who is the Chowon heir's mystery woman? Kennedy didn't know that yet. She only knew 30 strangers had just watched the worst version of her life collide with the best version of his. I need to get him home, she said, and walked out into the rain without looking back. Daniel let her go. He told himself it was respect. It was actually fear. He didn't trust what he would say next. That night, alone in a penthouse too large for one man, Daniel could not stop seeing the bracelet. Small. Silver. Engraved with letters he was almost sure he recognized, the same careful old-fashioned script his family's jeweler had used on Kennedy's wedding ring 6 years ago. He told himself it was nothing. Children wore jewelry. Coincidences existed. But he did not sleep. His mother had handled the entire separation 4 years ago, quietly, efficiently, while he was buried in a hostile takeover that nearly cost the company everything. He had never once questioned that arrangement. He had called it trust. Tonight, for the first time, he wondered what he had actually been trusting her with. By 7 the next morning, his driver had the address of Bridge Street Kitchen. Kennedy Dunbar had built her life out of routine, because routine did not ask questions. Wake up. Get Ellis dressed. Walk to the shelter. Work the kitchen. Pray the funding held 1 more month. Ellis had a cough that would not quit, and the free clinic had a 2-week wait. She had already decided she would skip her own lunch for a week if it meant covering the copay. That was the math of her life now, one impossible trade after another. That routine cracked the moment she looked up from the serving line and saw Daniel standing in the doorway, alone, without his entourage, holding 2 coffees like a man who had rehearsed this on the drive over and forgotten every word anyway. You don't get to just show up, she said. I know, he said. I'm here anyway. Behind him in Empire City's glass towers, his mother, chairwoman of Chowon Group, was already 3 moves ahead. She had spent 5 years making sure Kennedy Dunbar never resurfaced in her son's life. And with the board pushing Daniel toward a marriage alliance that would finally erase the family's last scandal, she had every reason to move fast now. Miss Odessa, who ran the kitchen and missed nothing, murmured to Kennedy from the doorway, "That man has the look of someone who already knows more than he's saying." She had no idea how right she was. "Why are you really here, Daniel?" Kennedy asked, arms crossed, keeping the folding table between them like a wall. "The bracelet," he said. "On your son. Where did it come from?" Her whole body went still. "Don't. Kennedy. You don't get to disappear for 4 years and then ask me questions like you have the right to answers." Her voice cracked just slightly before she caught it. "You let your mother buy me off the same week I found out I was pregnant, Daniel. I called. I wrote. I don't know what happened to any of it, but you never once called back." "I never bought you off," Daniel said. "I was told you took a settlement and asked for privacy. I was told you already had someone else lined up before the ink dried." Kennedy shot back. "I saw the photos, Daniel. I don't need saving. I need the truth, and nobody in your family has ever once given me that." Silence. "What photos?" Daniel said quietly. Not a question anymore. A demand. "Before we go any further, if you were Kennedy, could you ever trust him again? Or is some damage too deep to undo? Drop your honest answer below, because the truth Daniel is about to uncover is not the one either of them expects. Like this video if you're already Team Kennedy, and let's get into it." Kennedy hesitated. Then, for the first time in 4 years, she reached into the lining of an old coat and pulled out a folded, yellowed envelope. Daniel unfolded it with shaking hands. It was a letter, typed on Chowon letterhead, warning Kennedy that her nursing license would face review unless she signed the settlement and left Empire City quietly. Attached was a single photograph. Kennedy, arm's length from a stranger outside a hotel, a stack of folded bills between them. "I never took that money for me," Kennedy said. "I took it because your mother said she'd destroy my nursing license if I didn't disappear. That man was paying me back a loan I gave him for my mother's funeral. Your mother twisted it into something else and showed it to you before I ever had a chance to explain." Daniel's stomach turned over. "This isn't your handwriting." "No," Kennedy said. "It's your mother's assistant's." For 4 years, Daniel Cho had believed his wife left him for money. He was holding proof right now that she had been threatened into silence instead. Everything he thought he understood about the worst year of his life had just changed. Daniel's hands were still shaking when he looked up. "Why didn't you fight this? Legally, publicly, any way at all?" "With what?" Kennedy asked. "A lawyer I couldn't afford. Against a company that owns half the lawyers in this city? I had a newborn and a license under threat. I made the choice that let my son eat." For the first time in the conversation, Daniel had nothing to say. The power in the room had shifted, and both of them felt it. Kennedy Dunbar was not the desperate woman his mother had described to him. She was the only person who had told him a straight truth in 4 years, and she had done it while holding a to-go container from a shelter kitchen. "I'm going to fix this," Daniel said. "I didn't ask you to," Kennedy said. "I'm just done being quiet about it." 2 days later, Daniel came back, not with lawyers, not with cameras, just a small wooden puzzle for Ellis, who accepted it with the easy trust only a 4-year-old can offer a stranger. "Your mommy's tall friend," Ellis announced, studying him. "Something like that," Daniel said, kneeling to his level. Kennedy watched from the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, and felt something in her chest loosen that she had spent 4 years keeping locked. Ellis showed Daniel every piece of the puzzle twice, narrating each one like it mattered more than anything in the world. Daniel listened like it did. It was such a small thing. It nearly undid her. Later, after Ellis fell asleep, Daniel admitted quietly, "My grandmother asked me once years ago if I'd ever gotten a letter from you after the divorce. I told her no. She went quiet in a way I didn't understand at the time. I think I understand it now." "Don't," Kennedy said, but softer this time. "I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight," Daniel said. "I'm asking you to let me start proving I'm not the man who let you disappear." She didn't answer. But she didn't ask him to leave either. What neither of them knew was that Yoonju Cho already had a plan of her own. By the end of the week, an anonymous tip reached 3 Empire City gossip outlets. A homeless woman was allegedly stalking Chowon's vice chairman for money, using a child as leverage, days before the company's biggest merger announcement in a decade. Kennedy found out when Miss Odessa slid a phone across the counter, headline glowing on the screen. "They're calling me a con artist," Kennedy said, voice flat with disbelief. "In front of my son's school. In front of everyone who finally started respecting me again." Miss Odessa had already fielded 2 calls from worried donors that morning. "I told them the truth," she said. "But the truth doesn't travel as fast as a headline." Daniel arrived within the hour, fury barely controlled. "This has my mother's signature all over it." "Then stop protecting her long enough to prove it," Kennedy said. "Because if this doesn't stop, I lose everything I've rebuilt, and this time it happens in public. We are seconds away from the twist that changes absolutely everything, and I promise you it is bigger than a fake photo and a bad headline. Before we get there, tell me your prediction in the comments. How long has Daniel's mother really known the truth? Subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next." The answer came from someone neither of them expected. Daniel's grandmother arrived at Bridge Street Kitchen the next morning in a car far too polished for the neighborhood, carrying a small lacquered box she had kept locked in her closet for 4 years. "I should have given you this a long time ago," she told Daniel, setting the box on the table. "I told myself I was staying out of it. That was a lie. I was afraid of my own daughter-in-law, and I let that fear cost you your son." Inside the box was a letter, Kennedy's handwriting, dated 4 months after the divorce, mailed to Daniel's private office and never delivered to him. In it, Kennedy had written that she was pregnant, that she still loved him, and that she was terrified and needed him to call her back. "Your mother intercepted every letter Kennedy sent," Daniel's grandmother said quietly. "She has known about Ellis since before he was born. She did not just let you believe a lie once, Daniel. She protected that lie for 4 years." Daniel stared at the letter, then at Ellis playing with his puzzle by the window, sunlight catching the small silver bracelet on his wrist, the same bracelet the hospital had engraved the day he was born, before Kennedy legally changed his last name to protect him from a family that had already tried to erase him once. "He's mine," Daniel said. Not a question. A fact he had been circling for days and finally let himself land on. "He's always been yours," Kennedy said, and for the first time she let herself cry in front of him. 2 weeks later, Chowon Group's family council convened for what the board believed was a routine merger update. Daniel's grandmother made sure it became something else entirely. She placed the intercepted letter, the threatening letterhead, and a formal paternity confirmation on the table in front of the full board and Yoonju Cho. "You told this family you were protecting its future," she said. "You were protecting your own comfort, and you did it by stealing 4 years from my great-grandson." Yoonju did not deny it. She simply went pale, then quiet, the practice control finally cracking. Around the table, board members who had spent a decade taking her orders without question said nothing at all. Silence from people paid to always have an opinion was its own verdict. "Everything I did was to keep this family from falling apart again. Instead, you nearly broke the only part of it worth keeping," Daniel's grandmother said. By the end of the meeting, Yoonju Cho retained her name and her seat, but not her authority. The board voted to transfer operational control to Daniel, effective immediately. It was not a prison sentence. It was worse in its own quiet way. A woman who had built her entire identity on control watched it leave the room without her. Restitution, Daniel learned, was not one grand gesture. It was months of small, unglamorous proof. He personally funded the legal work to fully restore Kennedy's nursing license within 6 weeks. He showed up every Tuesday for Ellis's preschool pickup, rain or not, for 3 straight months, before Kennedy ever let him stay for dinner. He never once asked her to move into his world. Instead, slowly, without asking for credit, he started showing up inside hers. He learned Ellis took his medicine better with apple juice, not water. He learned Kennedy still could not stand the smell of hotel coffee. Small facts. The kind you only learn by actually staying. "I'm not doing this to win you back," he told her one evening, on the same street corner outside Bridge Street Kitchen where this had all started. "I'm doing it because it's who I should have been 4 years ago. You told me once I didn't need saving, I needed the truth," Kennedy said quietly. "I finally believe you're telling me all of it." It was the closest thing to forgiveness she had offered him. It was not the same as trust fully restored, and she made sure he understood the difference. She kept her own apartment. She kept her own name listed first on Ellis's documents. Some doors once closed that hard, opened slowly on purpose, and that was entirely her right. But that evening, under the same Empire City rain that had once humiliated her in front of 30 strangers, Daniel reached for her hand, and this time she let him hold it. Months later, at Ellis's 5th birthday party, Daniel's grandmother taught him to say his own name properly in Korean, laughing every time he got it wrong on purpose just to hear her laugh again. Kennedy watched from across the yard, a woman rebuilding her name on her own terms, not because a billionaire had rescued her, but because she had refused to disappear. The bracelet sits in a small box on Ellis's dresser today, too small for his wrist now, kept for the day he is old enough to understand exactly what it proved. Love did not fix what fear had broken. The truth did. And the truth, given enough time, always finds its way home. Daniel Cho did not get his family back by being forgiven. He got it back by becoming someone worth the risk of forgiveness. That distinction cost him 4 years to learn, and it was the only lesson that mattered. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and leave it a like, because this is Empire City Romance Stories, and we tell the love stories that survive the truth. Before you go, answer me honestly in the comments. If you were Kennedy, would you have let him back in? Or was 4 years of silence too long to forgive? I will see you in the next story.